Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news from the Washington Examiner. The headline, Joe Rogan slams leftist Jimmy Kimmel for perpetuating toxic comedy. Okay, sure. So on his podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience, Joe Rogan said, the problem with that kind of stuff is it continues to go in the same direction where more and more things become forbidden and toxic. Jimmy Kimmel made a tweet back to Elon Musk and he said, your pronouns are A-double-S and whole, which is pretty funny. And so then I read that, and there's people saying, please don't joke about pronouns. It's transphobic to joke about pronouns. Kimmel's had a real problem with Elon since the beginning of this, but it's like he's in this leftist thought bubble. He's in the most leftist thought bubble available, which is Hollywood. And, I think also, he famously, there's some video of him in blackface, and those came out, and he apologized for them, and I think he took the hit and really doubled down in the other direction. Rogan said Kimmel did some outrageous stuff back in the day, for hee-hees and ha-has. All right? Ricky Gervais reacted to the notion that when he hosted the Golden Globes, he'd just have a couple drinks and get up there and riff. He said, no, I write jokes. But his one regret was a joke that fell flat when introducing Tom Hanks and Tim Allen. His joke was, and I'm sure he told it better than I will here, what can I say about our next two presenters? The first is an actor, producer, and director whose movies have grossed over $3.5 billion at the box office. He's won 2 Academy Awards, 3 Golden Globes for his powerful and varied performances, starring in such films as Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, Castaway, Apollo 13, and Saving Private Ryan. The other is Tim Allen. Tim Allen said that Ricky apologized to him on the night for the comment. Tim said, Tom and I even said at the time, I didn't really get it. It's like he didn't finish the joke. It just went flat. Ricky explained the joke. The joke was Tim Allen and Tom Hanks. So I came out and said our next two presenters. The first has won 5 Oscars, combined box office of $5 billion, and the other, Tim Allen, right? It's a fine joke. I'm teasing Tim Allen. But anyone standing next to Tom Hanks, unless it's Dustin Hoffman or Robert Redford or Robert De Niro, could be me. It just happened to be Tim Allen. I have nothing against Tim Allen. He's a good actor. He's probably a nice bloke. So even though there's no malice and I could justify it comedically and everyone laughed, I didn't want Tim Allen to think, oh, that was written for me. Why me? Well, because you were standing next to Tom Hanks. Love it. Ryan Coogan is an English actor and comedian. This from Yahoo, the headline, John Cleese is irrelevant. Just like all my old comedy heroes, Ryan Coogan writes, I'm a 30-something comedy nerd, so the past few years have not been kind to me. You can't put on an episode of Father Ted. Great show. Find it on streaming here. I'm going to help you. I'm going to go. Let's see where it is. It's a great website called Just Watch, and it tells you where stuff is streaming. Father Ted is on Roku, Vudu, Tubi, Crackle, Pluto TV, BritBox, FilmRise, Plex, and Freevee. You can also buy it on Amazon. So if you're out there in Cleveland and you haven't seen Father Ted, what are you doing? Watch it, will you? Ryan Coogan writes, John Cleese is irrelevant just like all my old comedy heroes. You can't put on an episode of Father Ted or News Radio without feeling like you're somehow complicit in some terrible crime. Let this be a lesson to you kids. All of your heroes will betray you eventually. That's actually true. It's one of the things you learn about getting old. You've heard the phrase, don't meet your heroes. I've met William Shatner. Don't meet your heroes. Shatner's an odd duck. You guys seem to like when I tell the war stories. So this one goes back to the 90s. I was working at WR Radio in New York, and we would always ask the celebrities to do, they're called liners. So like, you're listening to the whatever show on Radio 710 WR. So on this one day, we wrote up, I think there were 25 liners. We knew Shatner's reputation. Some of them were straightforward. Some of them were ridiculous. And some of them were Star Trek jokes. And we handed him the piece of paper. Hey, Mr. Shatner, you willing to read these? And he's like, oh, let me take a look. He took the time, instead of just saying, no, I don't do that. He took the time to read them one by one. He's like, no, nope, won't do that one. Won't do that one. No, won't do that one. Now, you already want me to move on. I only did 4. He did that 25 times. And I'm telling you, some of them were as simple as, you're listening to Radio 710 WOR. While I'm telling WR stories, and I love this one. I think of this one all the time. My favorite, it's like 7:30 in the morning. I'm walking down the hallway, getting to work. I look up, and I have this face that must have said, hey, you're... And the man stuck out his hand and smiled and said, hi, Charlton Heston. So cool. Anyway, John Cleese is irrelevant just like all my old comedy heroes. Ryan Coogan writes, John Cleese is a particularly sad case because if you go back and watch old Faulty Towers or Monty Python, you don't get any sense whatsoever that the man doing silly walks and trying to refund dead birds will one day be most famous for complaining about cancel culture in the middle of a global pandemic. Cleese is always in the news now for getting upset about one thing or another, and most recently made headlines for tweeting, can anyone, including BBC employees, tell me why the BBC has not shown Monty Python for a couple of decades? the answer. It's entirely possible that Shrek's father-in-law was just having a bit of a senior moment and didn't realize that A, Netflix owns the rights to the show now, and B, the BBC has shown Monty Python several times over the past few decades, but fellow disappointment Grant Linneman weighed in with an answer that I think that probably sums up what Cleese was fishing for. They'd have to apologize for every other sketch. I want to comment on that in a second. Here's this weird myth among John Cleese fans, and I'm talking modern John Cleese fans who are mostly in it for the bad takes, that Monty Python was some kind of politically incorrect, anti-woke, deliberately offensive entity that your modern-day lefty snowflake couldn't possibly handle. I think it's because they hear Monty Python was so subversive, and instead of realizing that subversive in this context means they pushed the boundaries of what comedy could achieve and were well ahead of their time, they just hear racist. Sure, there's some borderline stuff in there, but this was made in the 70s. Even the most hardline Stuart Lee fan is going to be able to make their peace with a couple of sketches where the premise boils down to man in dress equals funny. Hell, that's basically the entire foundation of British comedy. All right, I'll jump in. So, unresearched, just from memory, when I think of Monty Python, I think of things like Cheese Shop and Dead Parrot, Mr. Neutron, Mr. Hilter running for office. I'm not recalling blatant racism, a lot of 70s style drag, but I don't think that was about like, haha, you were in a dress. I think it was just like, and I'm playing a woman and doing a ridiculous voice. Maybe I just canceled myself. I don't know. Ryan Coogan writes, it really feels at this point Cleese is either looking for reasons to be mad all the time or reasons to pretend to be mad all the time so he can cash in on those sweet, sweet GB news checks. If it's the latter, honestly, good for him. A man's got to eat. But if it's the former, and Cleese really does think amidst rising poverty, a nosediving economy, and the global march towards fascism, the greatest threat to the UK is 20-year-olds not liking a show he made 50 years ago, that's just a bit sad. Okay, this next thing is so stupid it actually made me angry. This is from Vulture. Zach Broussard reveals the top 1,000 comedians of 2022. So since 2014... Matt Broussard has released a list of the top 1,000 comedians. In 2016, the list was revealed through a series of billboards. 2018 was announced through 2,000 nominees, followed by a live awards show. And 2020's list was capped at 25% capacity to follow COVID guidelines. All right, that's all fun. For 2022, Matt Broussard said, the list has just been a series of bits. I copy and paste the same lists of names that I just move around every year. It just felt stale. It felt old, and I was kind of ready to quit and just walk away, but I was sort of thinking there was an opportunity to do something cool with it. So he shared the list, and you can find it on top1000comedians.com, but I clicked on it, and I was like, all right, that'll be fun. I could have some fun with that at the end of the year. It's all TikTok comedians, and aside from my old madness about TikTok comedians, you probably haven't heard of any of them. I'll start at the top. Number 1, Mr. Tater Tot. Number 2, Tristan Maloney. 3, Fart Sergeant. 4, Chick-fil-A Mignon. 5, Muscles and Nursing. Again, I'll stand here on Old Man Mountain. If you kids are like, what do you mean you don't know who Chick-fil-A Mignon is? I don't. I'm sorry. I'm old. So, all right, you got your clicks. 2 more lists. It's the end of the year. I got to clear these out. First up, Variety's Best Comedy Specials of 2022. I'll fly through it. Otsko at Kotska at 10. Good choice. 9, Lou Earl Howery. 8, Taylor Tomlinson. 7, Shang Wang. Number 1 on my list. 6, Bill Burr. 5, Catherine Cohen, The Twist She's Gorgeous. Haven't seen that on too many lists. 4, Kate Berlantz, Cinnamon in the Wind. Have not seen that on too many lists. 3, Ali Sadiq's The Domino Effect. Have not seen that on too many lists. 2, Matt Rogers, Have You Heard of Christmas? Haven't seen that on too many lists. And number 1, of course, Gerard Carmichael, Rothaniel, which, as you know, I feel comedy specials should actually be funny. And finally, Variety's Best Comedy Specials of 2022. Let's take a look. They list theirs in no particular order. Patton Oswalt's We All Scream. Love Patton, but I didn't like the middle of that special when he did the crowd work. I thought that should have been cut out. Next up, Taylor Tomlinson. Nick Kroll. Catherine Cohen's The Twist. Ali Wong's Don Wong. Earthquake's Legendary. I didn't think that was that good. Otsko's, yep, that's good. Kate Berlant, Cinnamon in the Wind. Joel Kim Booster's Psychosexual. David A. Arnold, It Ain't for the Weak. Kurt Braunaller's Perfectly Stupid. That one's on YouTube. Shang Wang, Sweet and Juicy. I keep telling you guys, Shang Wang, get on the train, everyone. Matt Rogers, Have You Heard of Christmas? And of course, Gerard Carmichael's Rothaniel. I think everybody just decided that's the number 1 special of the year, and who am I to argue? And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Happy New Year. See you tomorrow. All right, here's the pitch. 5 stories. They're all good news. It's called 5 Good News Stories. No negative news, just good news. Nice, easy way to start your day. Hopefully a smile. Hi, I'm Johnny Mac, host of 5 Good News Stories. You get the premise? There's 5 stories, and they're all good news. It's the number 5 Good News Stories. 5 Good News Stories. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.